Hey there, welcome to the Melanated Midlife podcast. My name is Akilah, and I am so glad that you stopped by here today. We are going to talk about what is slowly killing us, and it's not what you think. We're talking about work. We're talking about your professional life and how when you turn 50, once you are in this midlife season, we need to shift the way we think about work. I don't want you to be in a place where your work is slowly draining you, slowly sucking the life out of you. I want you to be chasing joy in this time of your life. So we need to figure out how to approach that from a season of wisdom and not from one where we are overworking and draining ourselves. So in this episode, I'm going to share 5 tips about how you can do that. And you might be surprised because the last two are probably going to be a little bit out of what you originally imagined. So the reason that work feels so heavy right now is not because you are behind or because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It might simply be because you have outgrown the way you have been working. So let's get into it right now. The reason work is feeling so heavy right now is not because you are behind. It's because you've outgrown the way you've been working. If you're still waiting for work to notice, you're waiting for your supervisors, your team members to notice or reward or validate you at this stage in your life, you really need to hear this. So, in this video, I want to walk you through a mindset shift that helped me personally and that I see midlife women struggling with all the time, especially when work starts to feel like it's more draining instead of meaningful like it used to. This is not about quitting your job. This is not about blowing up your career, honey. It is about working differently and doing some things on purpose. Now, I want you to, kind of go back with me and tell me if you're thinking, oh, that's me, because it's definitely me once upon a time. I want to tell you if this feels familiar because I had once upon a time super long days where I was carrying a lot of extra responsibility, being the dependable one, doing the work without asking to be seen, and then feeling disappointed because nothing came back my way. I've definitely been there, my dear. I gave, I showed up, I carried the load, and I quietly expected someone else to notice. And when that didn't happen, I didn't just feel frustrated, it really hurt. That's when I realized that something had to change and it had to start with me. It had to start with the way I was thinking about work. So the first thing was that I needed to learn to disengage from overworking. Overworking is not a badge of honor that it used to be. And I know that you're probably thinking like me that there was a time when I thought that staying late meant I was doing it right. I thought being exhausted at the end of the day meant that I was truly committed. But overworking often means blurred boundaries, not excellence. And when we're over 50, our energy is our currency. So if you're tired all the time, that's not motivation. That is a design problem. Working smarter is not about laziness. It's about wisdom. And that's the season that we're in. We're starting from wisdom. So I want you to ask this question of yourself. What would it look like for you to stop proving yourself and instead start protecting yourself? The second point that I want to make is I want you to shift from effort to impact. Being busy is not the same as being valuable. I realized once upon a time that I was doing a whole lot, but I was not always doing the things that moved the needle for my organization. And I really want to pause there because I want you to understand that what we're sometimes doing, a lot of what we are finding ourselves being drained by is a lot of the little extra stuff. It's that I was being, the one that was volunteering for all the big things, the one that was stepping in and kind of handling stuff for other people. And it ended up being a whole lot of extra things and not necessarily what my organization was seeing as valuable. So yeah, I probably felt like I was doing good stuff. I probably felt like, oh, I'm in everything. Therefore, I must be really valuable. I must be indispensable. But I had to really stop and think about, am I working on the goals that the organization has designated as their big goals, the things that the organization is truly measuring. And it's going to be different depending on what field or industry that you're in. So if you're in an organization where sales is what they are laser focused on, then think about what is it about your role that has been designated most important to support sales and revenue. If you're in education like I was, what is it about student achievement or with other data that was super important that the organization at the top was laser focused on? If I was spending all my time organizing extra activities or jumping in and volunteering for certain projects that didn't necessarily support those big goals, I realized that I was probably doing a whole lot, but it wasn't the things that the organization felt was moving the needle. So I was very reliable, but I was invisible. And that was a hard lesson to learn. So the key thing that I want you to remember is that your impact is going to matter more than the effort. You want your results to speak a whole lot louder than your sacrifice. You don't need to do more. You need to do what matters. At this stage in your career, your experience should be working for you, not draining you. So I want you to ask yourself this reflection question. If someone from your organization had to describe your impact in one sentence, what would they say? Now, the next point that I want to bring you to is about the importance of reclaiming joy. And we're talking about joy outside of work. And the core idea here is that work cannot be your only source of fulfillment. And I was that person, honey. I was in a season where work was my everything. My entire waking life was about work and everything that somehow supported the work. I didn't have a life outside of whatever I was doing professionally. And when it disappointed me, I felt empty. That's when I realized that I had given work too much power. And you need to understand this, my dear, that joy needs a place to land where it isn't about productivity. Solo joy matters. And you need something that feeds you and asks for nothing in return. And I'm not talking about things that you're doing in service to your family, not things that you're doing in service to your job, things that you're doing just for you, things that simply make you feel joy. So ask yourself, if work disappeared tomorrow, what would still bring you joy? What would still bring you fulfillment? Now, the next point that I want to make with you is that you need to learn to celebrate your damn self. Because if we're talking about joy and creating joy for yourself, then we need to have some kind of way that you are not sitting back waiting for external validation. And that is something that we are sometimes guilty of. And when we're waiting for other people to pat us on the back and other people to tell us that job well done, it can lead to heartbreak. It can lead to a lot of disappointment. And once again, you're giving someone else your power. And this is not necessarily making other people the bad guy. It's not making the organizations the bad guy. These are things where you have to regain control for yourself. Now, another problem is that I used to think that celebrations could only come after big milestones. That's another thing that I've changed in midlife because the truth is, some of the hardest wins are completely invisible to the outside world. There are things that I've done internally where I'm like, ooh, girl, you did that. And I need to remember to pat myself on my own back because those small wins, they matter. Those things that we maybe think, oh, that's a little too self indulgent for me to celebrate on. I'm going to be the one that's going to be like, no, I am your midlife hype girl. And I'm going to say that your celebrations can be quiet and they can be deeply personal, but they are definitely something that you need to make sure you do. Because if you don't acknowledge what it took, no one else will. No one else will know how hard it was or how impactful or significant it was for you to do that one thing or overcome that one obstacle. You need to mark moments that cost you emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And thinking about it, these are things where it could be about maybe you set a boundary. Maybe you were able to say no in a very difficult or awkward situation. These are things that we need to make sure that we are acknowledging, because this is all a part of growing up and growing into our midlife season by our design. So make sure that you make time to celebrate yourself. And the final point that I want to make for you is you really need to redefine what success looks like for you. And we probably are at a stage again where we're beyond the hustle phase of our 20s and our 30s. You know what I'm talking about, where we're constantly climbing and constantly doing the things and checking off the successes that are universally accepted. And I was that person again. You've probably heard my story by now, where I climbed the ladder professionally, and I followed the career path that was acceptable, but it got to a point where eventually I needed to define success for me right now, because success at 25 and 35 looked very, very differently. And quite frankly, just didn't have time for the things that were outwardly acceptable to other people. It didn't mean that they were wrong. It's just that I had changed. So the old definition of success may have also expired for you. So I had to come to some realizations of exactly what felt good for me right now. Success for me was not necessarily about the stuff. A lot of it was revolving around how I felt internally. So success for you might look a lot quieter, but it could feel significantly stronger. It might be about protecting your peace. Maybe it's about having flexibility in where you live and how you go through your day-to-day personal life. It could simply be about having control over your time. And with all of these, you are allowed to continue to evolve and change your mind as you go through this season. If no one else was watching, I want you to really think about it. If no one else was watching and taking score, what would success look like for you right now in your 50s? And I tell you, if you've gone through these 5 tips that I have about, reimagining your commitment to, or the way that you work, I want to get you to ask this question of yourself: is where is it that you are still working from an old, outgrown version of yourself? Really think about that, because if you are honest, you probably have some uncomfortable things that are gnawing at you right now, that you maybe need to redefine some things. I want to invite you, if you're really thinking about this, comment below. Tell me one shift that you are considering, either based on what we've talked about here today, or maybe something that is gone unmentioned that maybe we need to bring into the conversation. If this resonated with you, I definitely want you to sit with this one question, and that is, where am I still working from an old version of myself? If this hits a nerve, then definitely comment below. But then I also invite you to go a little bit deeper, to grab a copy of my book, Melanated Midlife. The link is in the description, so that you can get a little bit more information on how you can do more work about redesigning the way you approach your professional areas of your life in this season. All right. I am so happy that you were able to join me today. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can get more alerts when we are launching more episodes. But definitely share this with other people in your village, because we want to expand the conversation to more midlifers that are looking to redesign their experience. I hope you enjoyed this, and I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next episode.